Baby found German Shepherd, trapped in a burning barn. What he did next left everyone in tears. The story you're about to listen will leave you speechless. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and let us know where you're watching from. Little Ethan Parker wasn't like other 5-year-olds. While most children his age were afraid of bugs and shadows, Ethan had an uncanny connection with creatures that left adults scratching their heads. His bright hazel eyes seemed to hold wisdom far beyond his years, as if he understood secrets of the natural world that grown-ups had long forgotten. "Mom, the blue jay at the window needs water," Ethan said one morning, pointing to a bird that had landed on their porch railing. His mother, Sarah, looked up from washing dishes to see the bird tilting its head, looking directly at her son. "How do you know that, sweetie?" she asked, drying her hands on a dish towel. Ethan shrugged. "He told me." Sarah exchanged glances with her husband, Daniel, who was reading the newspaper at the kitchen table. They'd grown used to these strange moments. Squirrels that would eat from Ethan's palm, stray cats that followed him home, and the neighbor's aggressive dog that would roll over for belly rubs the moment Ethan approached. "He's just imaginative," Daniel would say whenever friends or family commented on Ethan's peculiar way with animals. But privately, he wondered if there was something more to it, something that couldn't be explained away so easily. They lived in Pinewood, a small farming community where everyone knew everyone else's business. Word had spread about that Parker boy who talked to animals, but most folks chalked it up to childish imagination. Some even found it endearing, the way Ethan would whisper to butterflies or sit perfectly still while birds perched on his shoulders. But Sarah saw something in her son's eyes when he communed with creatures, a focused intensity, as if he were listening to words only he could hear. It both amazed and frightened her. One warm summer night, as moonlight spilled through Ethan's bedroom window, Sarah tucked him into bed with his favorite stuffed animal, a worn teddy bear named Charlie. "Good night, my special boy," she whispered, kissing his forehead. She had barely reached the doorway when Ethan sat bolt upright, his small face contorted with concern. "Someone's crying," he said, his voice unusually serious. "Someone far away is scared." A chill ran down Sarah's spine. "It's just the wind, sweetie. Go to sleep now." But Ethan's eyes were wide and alert. He clutched Charlie tighter to his chest. "No, Mom, it's a dog. He's trapped and scared. He needs help." Daniel appeared in the doorway behind Sarah. "Another nightmare, buddy?" he asked gently. "It's not a dream, Dad," Ethan insisted, his little voice rising with urgency. "He's calling for help. We need to find him." Sarah sat on the edge of the bed and smoothed Ethan's sandy brown hair. "There's no dog, honey. Everything's fine. All the animals are safe in their homes, just like you." Ethan's lower lip trembled. "You don't believe me." "We do," Daniel said quickly, though his eyes told a different story. "But it's late now. If you still hear the dog in the morning, we can look then. Deal?" Reluctantly, Ethan nodded and lay back down, but his eyes remained open, staring at the ceiling. "He's so scared," he whispered, a single tear sliding down his cheek. "He can't get out." Sarah turned off the light and closed the door partway, leaving just enough space for the hallway light to spill through. As she and Daniel walked to their bedroom, she grabbed his arm. "Do you think we should be worried?" she asked in a hushed voice. "This isn't the first time he's claimed to hear animals in distress." Daniel sighed. "He has an active imagination, that's all. Remember last month when he insisted a rabbit was stuck in the Johnsons' garden? We spent hours looking, and there was nothing there." "But that stray cat he found in the storm drain last winter?" Sarah countered. "No one else heard it crying." Daniel rubbed his tired eyes. "Let's talk about it tomorrow. He'll forget all about it by morning." But when dawn broke, Ethan was already dressed and standing by their bed, his face pale and determined. "He's still crying," he said the moment Sarah opened her eyes. "He's at the old Miller farm. I could see the red barn in my dreams. We need to go now." Sarah groaned and looked at the clock. 6:15 a.m. "Ethan, honey, the Millers moved away years ago. No one lives at that farm anymore." "The dog is there," Ethan insisted, pulling at her arm with surprising strength. "Please, Mom, he needs us." Daniel rolled over, his voice muffled by the pillow. "Go back to bed, buddy. It's too early." But Ethan was unusually persistent. "Dad, please! He's running out of time!" Something in his voice, a desperate certainty, made Sarah sit up. She'd never seen her son so agitated. His small hands were clenched into fists, and his eyes shone with unshed tears. "Daniel," she said, shaking her husband's shoulder, "maybe we should check, just to put his mind at ease." Daniel groaned but sat up, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "Fine. But after this, no more middle-of-the-night animal rescues, okay?" Ethan nodded vigorously, already pulling Sarah toward the door. "Hurry!" 20 minutes later, they were driving down the dusty road that led to the abandoned Miller property. The sun was just beginning to peek over the horizon, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. In the back seat, Ethan sat forward, his seatbelt stretched to its limit as he strained to see through the windshield. "There!" he shouted suddenly, pointing ahead. "The red barn!" Sarah squinted through the early morning haze. "I don't see anything, honey. It's there, and—" Ethan's voice trailed off, his face draining of color. "Oh no, there's smoke. Dad, drive faster." Daniel was about to tell his son to calm down when his phone rang. He answered it on the car's speaker system. "Dan, it's Mike from the volunteer fire department. Where are you guys?" Daniel frowned. "On the road to the old Miller place." "Why?" There was a pause on the other end. "How did you know?" "We just got a call. Lightning must have hit the barn during that little storm last night. It's been smoldering and just broke into flames. We're on our way now." Sarah gasped, turning to look at Ethan, whose eyes were wide with vindication and fear. "See?" he whispered. "The dog is in there. We have to hurry." Daniel pressed harder on the accelerator, his knuckles white against the steering wheel. "We've got Ethan with us, Mike. He's been insisting there's a dog trapped at the Miller barn. Any truth to that?" Mike's voice crackled through the speakers. "No idea. Place has been empty for years, but I'll be damned." "How did the kid know about the fire?" Ethan's voice was small but clear from the back seat. "I didn't know about the fire. I heard the dog calling for help." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Finally, Mike spoke again, his voice uncertain. "Well, get there safe. Fire truck's about 10 minutes out." As they crested the hill, they saw it. The abandoned Miller farm, with its weathered house and large red barn. Smoke billowed from the roof of the barn, orange flames licking at the wooden structure. Daniel pulled the car to a stop at a safe distance. "Stay in the car," he ordered, unbuckling his seatbelt. "Both of you. I'll check if anyone's around." But the moment he stepped out of the car, they heard it. A faint, desperate barking coming from inside the burning structure. "It's him!" Ethan cried, fumbling with his seatbelt. "That's the dog I heard." Sarah grabbed her son's arm. "Ethan, no! You can't go near there! It's dangerous!" Ethan looked at her with eyes far older than his 5 years. "Mom, he's scared. He's been calling me all night. I have to help him." Before she could tighten her grip, Ethan had slipped from her grasp and was running toward the barn, his small legs pumping furiously. "Ethan!" Sarah screamed, scrambling out of the car. "Daniel, stop him!" Daniel turned just in time to see his son sprinting toward the burning barn. He broke into a run, his heart pounding in his chest. "Ethan, come back here right now!" But Ethan had already reached the barn door. He paused for just a moment, tilting his head as if listening to something only he could hear, then ducked inside. Sarah's scream tore through the morning air as flames engulfed the entrance where her son had just disappeared. Inside the barn, heat pressed against Ethan's skin like a heavy blanket. Smoke stung his eyes and filled his lungs, making him cough. Most children would have been paralyzed with fear, but Ethan moved with purpose, guided by something beyond normal senses. "I'm coming!" he called out, following the desperate cries that echoed in his mind. "Where are you?" The barking grew more frantic, leading him deeper into the burning structure. Beams creaked overhead, and embers floated down like fiery snowflakes. Through the thick smoke, Ethan spotted a shape in the corner. A large German shepherd pinned beneath a fallen support beam. "I found you," Ethan whispered, dropping to his knees beside the frightened animal. The dog's amber eyes locked onto his, filled with pain and fear. "It's okay. I heard you calling." The German shepherd whimpered, trying in vain to free itself from the heavy beam. Its fur was singed, and a nasty gash ran along its side, but the creature was very much alive and fighting to stay that way. Ethan placed a small hand on the dog's head, and immediately the animal grew calmer. "My name is Ethan," he said softly. "What's yours?" The dog blinked slowly, and somehow Ethan understood. "Max." That's a good name. With determination that belied his size, Ethan pushed against the beam that pinned Max to the ground. It barely moved. The barn groaned around them, more debris falling as the fire spread. Time was running out. I can't lift it, Ethan admitted, tears cutting clean tracks down his soot-stained face. But I won't leave you. He looked around desperately, searching for something to use as leverage. The smoke was getting thicker, making it harder to breathe or see. Ethan's lungs burned, and dizziness threatened to overwhelm him. But Max's silent pleas kept him focused. Outside, Sarah and Daniel watched in horror as the barn burned, prevented from following their son by the intense heat and collapsing entrance. "My baby!" Sarah sobbed, fighting against Daniel's restraining arms. "Let me go! Ethan's in there!" The wail of sirens announced the arrival of the fire truck, but to the distraught parents, help seemed to be moving in slow motion. Mike and his team of volunteer firefighters jumped from the truck, quickly assessing the situation. "My son!" Daniel shouted, pointing to the barn. "He ran in after a dog!" Mike's face paled. "Jesus Christ," he muttered, then turned to his team. "Full gear now. We've got a child inside." Two firefighters immediately suited up and approached the barn, hosing down a path to the side entrance that wasn't yet fully engulfed. "Ethan!" Mike called through his mask. "Can you hear me, buddy?" Inside, Ethan's head snapped up at the sound of voices. "Help!" He tried to shout, but smoke filled his lungs, turning his cry into a weak cough. Max barked loudly, again and again, offering his voice when the boys failed. Guided by the barking, the firefighters fought their way through the burning barn. Through the smoke, they spotted a small figure hunched protectively over a large dog. "I found him!" one of the firefighters shouted. "The kid's alive! There's a dog too!" The firefighter, Tim Jackson, who'd known the Parkers since before Ethan was born, knelt beside the boy. "Hey, buddy, we're gonna get you out of here." Ethan looked up with smoke-reddened eyes. "Max is stuck. We can't leave him." Tim assessed the situation quickly. The beam was heavy, but not impossible for two grown men to lift. "We'll get you both out," he promised, waving his partner over. "But you need to stand back while we lift this." Ethan shook his head stubbornly. "I promised I wouldn't leave him." Tim didn't have time to argue. "Then stay by his head, keep him calm. We'll do the lifting." Together, the two firefighters positioned themselves on either side of the beam. "On three," Tim said. "1, 2, 3. With a grunt of effort, they lifted the heavy wood just enough for Max to wiggle free. The dog yelped in pain, but managed to stand on shaky legs. Without missing a beat, Ethan wrapped his small arms around Max's neck. "You did it," he whispered. "You're free now." The roof above them gave an ominous crack. "We need to move, now!" Tim's partner shouted, already guiding them toward the exit. Ethan tried to coax Max to follow, but the dog's injured leg buckled beneath him. "He can't walk!" Without hesitation, Tim scooped up the boy while his partner attempted to lift the German Shepherd. Max growled in pain but didn't bite, somehow understanding they were trying to help. "Almost there," Tim encouraged, seeing daylight through the smoke. "Just a few more steps." They had nearly reached the exit when a burning beam crashed down from above. Tim lunged forward, shielding Ethan with his body, but the beam was headed straight for them. In a movement that defied his injuries, Max leaped forward, pushing both Tim and Ethan clear of the falling debris. The beam struck the dog instead, eliciting a yelp of pain that cut through the roar of the flames. "Max!" Ethan screamed, struggling against Tim's grip. "No!" The second firefighter immediately moved to free the dog, lifting the smoking beam with strength born of adrenaline. Max lay still for a heart-stopping moment, then raised his head weakly. "Come on, boy!" the firefighter urged, helping the injured animal to its feet. "Let's get out of here." Moments later, they emerged from the burning barn into the fresh morning air. Sarah and Daniel rushed forward, tears streaming down their faces as they enveloped their son in desperate hugs. "Ethan! Oh my God! Ethan!" Sarah sobbed, checking him for injuries. "Are you hurt? Why did you run in there? You could have died." Ethan coughed, his face streaked with soot, but his eyes immediately sought out Max, who had collapsed on the grass a few feet away. The firefighters were already administering oxygen to the injured dog. "Max called me," Ethan said simply, his voice hoarse from smoke. "He was trapped. No one else could hear him." Daniel knelt beside his son, torn between relief and anger. "You can't ever do something like that again. Do you understand? Ever." But Ethan's attention was fixed on the German Shepherd. "Is Max going to be okay?" he asked, his lower lip trembling. Mike, who had been coordinating the efforts to contain the barn fire, approached them. "The vet's on the way," he said, his expression a mixture of concern and amazement. "But I gotta ask, how did you know, kid? How did you know there was a dog in there?" Ethan looked at Mike with those unsettlingly wise eyes. I heard him crying in my head. He was scared and couldn't get out. Mike exchanged glances with Daniel, who shrugged helplessly. "He's been insisting he heard a dog since last night," Daniel explained. "We had no idea the barn was on fire or that there was actually an animal inside." "That's something else," Mike said slowly. "That dog shouldn't have been there at all. The Millers have been gone for years, and they didn't have pets." As if on cue, a truck pulled up, and a middle-aged man jumped out, his face ashen. "Max," he called, rushing toward the injured German Shepherd. "Oh my God, Max!" Everyone turned to look at the newcomer. "You know this dog?" Mike asked. The man nodded, kneeling beside the German Shepherd. "He's mine. Max is a trained search and rescue dog. We were driving through town last night when he jumped out of my truck during that lightning storm. I've been looking for him all night." "He must have taken shelter in the barn," Tim suggested. "Got trapped when the lightning started the fire." The man, who introduced himself as Robert Thompson, stroked Max's singed fur gently. "I can't believe he's alive. How did anyone know he was in there?" All eyes turned to Ethan, who stood clutching his mother's hand, his gaze never leaving the injured dog. "My son," Sarah began, then stopped, unsure how to explain. Ethan somehow knew. Robert looked at the small boy with newfound interest. "You found my dog?" Ethan nodded. "He told me where he was. He was calling for help all night." Instead of dismissing the child's claim, Robert studied him intently. "You heard him? In your mind?" Again Ethan nodded. Robert sat back on his heels, an odd expression crossing his face. "In all my years working with search and rescue animals, I've only met one other person who could do that. A woman in Colorado who could sense animals in distress from miles away. She saved dozens of lives." A strange hush fell over the group. Even the firefighters paused in their work, watching the interaction between the man and the boy. "Is that normal?" Daniel asked cautiously. Robert shook his head. "No. It's extremely rare. Some people call it a gift." He looked at Ethan with new respect. "Your son has something special, Mr. Parker. Something that saved Max's life today." The veterinarian arrived then, hurrying over to examine the injured German Shepherd. Everyone stepped back to give her room to work, except for Ethan, who remained close, his small hand resting on Max's head. "You're going to be okay," he whispered to the dog. "The doctor will help you." Max's tail thumped weakly against the grass, his amber eyes fixed trustingly on the boy who had risked everything to save him. As the adults discussed the miracle of the morning, how a 5-year-old had somehow known about a dog trapped in a burning building, Ethan continued his silent communion with Max. Words weren't necessary between them. Their connection transcended ordinary communication. The vet looked up from her examination, her expression grave. "He's got some burns, a few cracked ribs, and that leg is definitely broken. He needs immediate surgery." Robert nodded, already pulling out his phone. "Whatever it costs, he's family." "Can I come?" Ethan asked suddenly, his voice small but determined. "Max is scared of the animal hospital." The adults exchanged looks, but before anyone could respond, Max whimpered and licked Ethan's hand, as if confirming the boy's assessment. "How would you know that?" Robert asked gently. Ethan shrugged. "He told me. He got hurt before at a hospital, and the people weren't nice, but he'll be brave if I'm there." Robert's eyebrows shot up. "He's right. Max was mistreated at a clinic before I adopted him from the rescue. He's had anxiety about veterinary visits ever since." He looked at Sarah and Daniel. "Your son really can communicate with him." Sarah pulled Ethan close, her mind reeling. All these years, she'd attributed his connection with animals to a vivid imagination. But this was something else entirely, something she couldn't explain away. "We'll follow you to the clinic," she said finally, looking to Daniel for confirmation. He nodded, still processing everything that had happened. As they prepared to leave, Mike approached with a camera crew from the local news station that had arrived to cover the fire. "The world's gonna want to hear about this," he said. "Kid psychically locates dog in burning building. That's a headline if I ever heard one." Sarah instinctively tightened her grip on Ethan. "I don't know if we want that kind of attention." But it was too late. The story of the boy who had saved a dog from a burning barn was already spreading through Pinewood like wildfire. By nightfall, Ethan Parker would be the talk of the town, the child who could hear animals calling for help. In the back of the veterinarian's van, Ethan sat beside Max, his small hand never leaving the dog's fur. "You're my hero," he whispered. "You saved me from the falling beam." Max's eyes, though clouded with pain, held a deep intelligence. For a moment, something passed between boy and dog, an understanding that went beyond words. Sarah watched from a few feet away, a chill running down her spine. Her son had always been special, but today had revealed something extraordinary, something that would change their lives forever. As the van pulled away, heading for the animal hospital in the next town, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of an incredible journey, not just for Ethan, but for all of them. The 2-hour drive to Pine Valley Animal Hospital felt like an eternity. Ethan sat in the back of his parents' car, unusually quiet, his eyes fixed on the veterinary van ahead that carried Max. Every few minutes he would close his eyes and furrow his brow in concentration. "What are you doing, honey?" Sarah asked, twisting in her seat to look at him. "Telling Max to be brave," Ethan replied simply. "He's hurting bad, but I promised we'd be there soon." Daniel exchanged a look with his wife, still struggling to process the morning's events. Their son, their perfectly ordinary, if somewhat quirky son, had somehow known about a dog trapped in a burning building miles from their home. Not just known, but heard its cries for help when no one else could. "Ethan," Daniel began carefully, "how long have you been able to talk to animals like this?" Ethan shrugged, his eyes still closed. "Always, I guess. They talk, and I listen. Didn't everyone?" "No, sweetheart," Sarah said gently. "Most people can't hear what animals are thinking or feeling the way you can." Ethan opened his eyes, genuine surprise crossing his face. "Really? But it's so loud sometimes." A chill ran down Sarah's spine. How many times had Ethan mentioned hearing animals, only to have them dismiss it as imagination? How many times had he tried to tell them something important, only to be sent back to bed or told to stop making up stories? The veterinary van turned into a large, modern facility at the edge of Pine Valley. The Parkers followed, parking beside Robert Thompson's truck, which had arrived moments before. As they got out of the car, Ethan immediately ran toward the van, where veterinary technicians were carefully lifting Max's stretcher. "Be careful with his leg," Ethan called out. "The left one hurts the most." One of the technicians looked up in surprise as Ethan approached. "Actually, yes, the x-rays we took in the field show the left femur is fractured." Robert, who had been speaking with the lead veterinarian, turned to watch as Ethan placed a gentle hand on Max's head. The German shepherd, who had been whimpering softly, immediately grew calmer, his anxious eyes fixed on the small boy. "It's okay," Ethan whispered. "These doctors are nice. They're going to fix your leg and the burns. I'll wait right here." Dr. Elena Martinez, the head veterinarian, approached the group. "We need to get him into surgery right away," she said, her voice kind but urgent. "The burns aren't as severe as they could have been, but that leg needs immediate attention." As the technicians began to wheel Max toward the entrance, the dog suddenly whined and struggled, his eyes wild with fear. "Wait!" Ethan cried, rushing forward. He leaned close to Max's ear and whispered something, then stepped back. "Okay, he's ready now." To everyone's amazement, Max visibly relaxed, allowing himself to be wheeled into the building without further resistance. "What did you tell him?" Robert asked, kneeling to Ethan's level. "That I'd be waiting when he wakes up," Ethan answered. "He was afraid they'd hurt him more, or that no one would be there after. He got left alone before when he was hurt." Robert's face showed his astonishment. That's exactly what happened to him at his last owner's. He was injured in a training accident and then abandoned at a shelter. He studied Ethan with growing wonder. "You really can hear his thoughts, can't you?" Ethan nodded, as if this were the most natural thing in the world. Not exactly like words, more like feelings with pictures. Max shows me things that happen to him, and I can feel what he feels. The adults exchange glances, a mix of wonder and uncertainty on their faces. What did it mean that a 5-year-old boy could communicate with animals in this way? Was it a blessing or something to be concerned about? In the waiting room, time crawled by. Robert paced restlessly while Sarah and Daniel sat with Ethan, who had fallen asleep, exhausted from the morning's events. The smoke inhalation had left him with a slight wheeze, and the emergency medical technicians had recommended he be seen by a doctor, but Ethan had refused to leave until he knew Max was okay. 3 hours later, Dr. Martinez emerged from the surgical area, still wearing her scrubs. All 3 adults stood immediately, and Ethan jerked awake, as if sensing her presence. "How is he?" Robert and Ethan asked in perfect unison. Dr. Martinez smiled, though her eyes showed her fatigue. "The surgery went well. We've set the leg and treated the burns. He's a fighter. He's already trying to wake up from the anesthesia." "Can I see him?" Ethan asked, already sliding off his chair. The veterinarian hesitated. "He's in recovery. Normally we don't allow visitors until the animal is fully awake and stable." "Please," Ethan said, his eyes wide and pleading. "He's scared in the new place. He needs to know I kept my promise." Robert placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder. "If it's possible, doctor, I think it might help. Max has severe anxiety from past trauma, especially in clinical settings." Dr. Martinez considered for a moment, then nodded. "All right, but just for a few minutes and only one person." Before anyone could object, Ethan stepped forward. "I should go. He's asking for me." A strange expression crossed Dr. Martinez's face. Not quite disbelief, but something close to it. "Asking for you?" Ethan nodded solemnly. "Right now. He's trying to get up, but his leg hurts too much. He thinks you left him there alone." Just then, a veterinary technician rushed through the doors. "Dr. Martinez, the shepherd is becoming agitated. His heart rate is elevated, and he's trying to stand despite the sedation." Dr. Martinez's eyes widened. She looked from the technician to Ethan and back again. "All right," she said finally. "You can come in, young man, but you must be very quiet and careful. Your parents can watch through the window." Ethan followed Dr. Martinez into the recovery area, his small form dwarfed by the medical equipment around him. Through a large window, Sarah and Daniel watched nervously as their son approached the groggy German shepherd lying on a padded table. The moment Max saw Ethan, his frantically twitching tail began to thump steadily against the table. The dog made a soft whining sound, trying to lift his head despite the lingering effects of anesthesia. "I'm here," Ethan said softly, placing his hand gently on Max's head. "Just like I promised. You did so good, and the doctors fixed your leg." The effect was immediate and startling. Max's elevated heart rate, displayed on a monitor beside the table, began to slow to normal levels. His strained breathing eased, and his tense muscles visibly relaxed. "Remarkable," Dr. Martinez murmured, checking the monitors. "I've never seen anything like it. It's as if he understood every word." "He does," Ethan said simply. "He wants to know when he can go home with Mr. Thompson. He doesn't like the smell here." Dr. Martinez raised an eyebrow. "Well, you can tell him he needs to stay at least 3 days for observation. Those burns need special care, and we need to monitor his leg for infection." Ethan nodded and leaned close to Max's ear, whispering something the adults couldn't hear. Max's eyes, though still hazy from medication, remained fixed on the boy, as if he were absorbing every word. Outside in the waiting room, Robert approached Sarah and Daniel. "Your son is extraordinary," he said, his voice filled with wonder. "I've worked with animals all my life, and I've never seen anything like this." Sarah twisted her hands nervously. "We don't really understand it ourselves. He's always had a way with animals, but this is different." "It's a gift," Robert said firmly. "A rare and precious gift. My sister-in-law works with a research center in Colorado that studies human-animal communication. They've documented a few cases like Ethan's. People who can sense animals in distress, sometimes from great distances." Daniel frowned. "You mean there are others who can do what Ethan does?" "A handful, worldwide," Robert confirmed. "Most showed signs as children, just like your son. The researchers call them animal empaths, humans with an extraordinary capacity to connect with animals on a level that transcends normal communication. Is it safe? Sarah asked, voicing the fear that had been growing since that morning. For him to have this ability? Robert's expression softened. It's not dangerous, if that's what you're asking, but it can be overwhelming, especially for a child. Animals communicate differently than humans. More directly, more honestly. They don't filter their emotions or needs. That would explain a lot, Daniel murmured. The nightmares, the times he'd wake up crying about animals he'd never seen. Exactly, Robert said. He's probably been picking up distress signals from animals for miles around, without understanding how to process or block them. He hesitated, then continued. The research center I mentioned, they have programs that help people like Ethan learn to manage their abilities, to control when and how they connect, so it doesn't overwhelm them. Sarah and Daniel exchanged looks, uncertainty written on their faces. Before they could respond, Dr. Martinez emerged from the recovery room with Ethan. I've never seen anything like it, she declared, an expression of amazement on her face. That dog should still be groggy and disoriented from anesthesia, but the moment your son spoke to him, it was as if a switch flipped. His vital signs stabilized, his stress indicators dropped. It's medically extraordinary. Ethan, oblivious to the stir he was causing, yawned widely. The excitement and trauma of the day were catching up with him, and the smoke inhalation had left him exhausted. I think we need to get this little hero checked out himself, Sarah said, placing her hand on Ethan's forehead. He inhaled a lot of smoke in that barn. Dr. Martinez nodded. There's a good pediatric urgent care just down the street. I can call ahead for you. As they prepared to leave, Robert handed Daniel a business card. Think about what I said. Your son has a remarkable gift, one that saved Max's life today. With the right guidance, he could help many more animals. Sarah tucked the card into her purse, then took Ethan's hand. Thank you for understanding. Not everyone would. Robert smiled. When you work with animals as long as I have, you learn to recognize the special ones, both human and animal. Your son is definitely special. At the pediatric clinic, Dr. Lucas Chen confirmed that Ethan had suffered mild smoke inhalation, but would make a full recovery with rest and respiratory treatments. As he listened to Ethan's lungs, the boy suddenly spoke up. Your cat is having kittens. Dr. Chen's stethoscope paused mid-movement. Excuse me? Your cat, the black one with the white paw. She's having kittens right now, 4 of them. She's under your porch swing. Dr. Chen stared at the boy, then at Sarah and Daniel. How could he possibly know that? My cat Midnight is pregnant, and she does have a white paw, but I left her at home this morning, perfectly fine. Sarah sighed. It was happening again. Ethan's inexplicable connection with animals revealing itself to yet another stranger. He just knows things about animals, she explained weakly. Dr. Chen's expression changed from confusion to intrigue. You know, I've read about cases like this. People with extraordinary empathic abilities specifically related to animals. There was a paper in the Journal of Interspecies Communication just last month. Daniel leaned forward. You don't think it's just imagination? 4 kittens under a porch swing is pretty specific for imagination, Dr. Chen replied. He pulled out his phone and dialed a number. Hey May, can you check under the porch swing in the backyard? Midnight might be there. He waited, then his eyebrows shot up. She is? And she's 4? Are you sure? Another pause. Well, I'll be damned. He ended the call and looked at Ethan with new respect. 4 kittens, just like you said. My wife says she just found Midnight under the porch swing, already nursing them. He shook his head in wonder. How did you know? Ethan, who had been swinging his legs off the edge of the examination table, shrugged. She told me. She was worried because one kitten wasn't breathing right away. But it's okay now. The orange one. Dr. Chen sat down heavily on his stool, stunned into momentary silence. This is remarkable. In all my years of medical practice, I've never encountered anything like this. Sarah squeezed Ethan's hand. We're still trying to understand it ourselves. Dr. Chen studied Ethan with professional interest. Has he undergone any neurological evaluations? MRI scans? There have been studies suggesting that people with these abilities have unique neural patterns. differences in the limbic system and right temporal lobe that might explain their enhanced connection with animals. No, Daniel said. Until today, we thought it was just an active imagination. We had no idea he was actually communicating with animals. I'd like to refer you to a colleague at Pine Valley General, Dr. Amara Patel. She specializes in neurodevelopmental research and has a particular interest in cases like Ethan's. Dr. Chen wrote a name and number on his prescription pad. This shouldn't be treated as an illness or disorder, but understanding the neuroscience behind it could help Ethan learn to manage his abilities as he grows. As they left the clinic with instructions for respiratory treatments and a follow-up appointment, Sarah and Daniel were quiet, each lost in their own thoughts. The events of the day had turned their understanding of their son upside down. The child they thought they knew contained depths and abilities they had never imagined. Ethan fell asleep in the car on the way back to the animal hospital, worn out from the day's excitement and stress. When they arrived, Robert was waiting for them in the reception area. "How is he?" Sarah asked, nodding toward the treatment area where Max was recovering. "Stable and resting," Robert replied. "The staff is amazed at how well he's doing, considering the extent of his injuries." He glanced at the sleeping boy in Daniel's arms. "How about our young hero?" "Mild smoke inhalation, but he'll be fine with rest," Sarah said. The doctor was surprised by Ethan's abilities. Robert nodded. "I've been making some calls while you were gone. The research center I mentioned is very interested in meeting Ethan. They believe children like him could revolutionize our understanding of animal cognition and communication." Daniel's arms tightened protectively around his sleeping son. "He's only 5. We're not going to make him into some kind of research subject." "Of course not," Robert assured them. "But they could help him understand and manage his gift. And in a world where animal habitats are disappearing and species are going extinct at an alarming rate, someone with Ethan's abilities could make a real difference." Sarah rubbed her temples, feeling the beginnings of a headache. It was too much to process all at once. This morning, they had been an ordinary family in an ordinary town. Now they were discussing research centers and neural patterns and animal empaths. "We need time," she said finally. "Time to think, to adjust to all this." Robert nodded understandingly. "Of course. But there is one more thing you should know." He hesitated, then continued. "The local news crew that was at the fire, they're running a story tonight about Ethan's rescue of Max. They're calling him the Animal Whisperer of Pinewood." Sarah groaned. This was exactly what she'd feared, their private family matter becoming a public spectacle. "We didn't give permission for that." "It's a small town," Robert reminded her gently. "And what happened was remarkable. People are going to talk regardless." As if on cue, Ethan stirred in his father's arms, his eyes fluttering open. "Is Max okay?" he asked immediately. "He's doing well," Robert assured him. "Thanks to you." Ethan smiled sleepily. "He's dreaming about running in a big field. His leg doesn't hurt in his dreams." The simple statement, delivered with such certainty, sent another shock of realization through the adults. This was real. Their son could actually perceive the thoughts and feelings of animals, even their dreams. "Ethan," Sarah began carefully, "how would you feel about meeting other people who can do what you do, people who can hear animals the way you can?" Ethan's eyes widened. "There are others like me?" "A few," Robert confirmed. "Not many, but yes." "Do they help animals who are scared or hurt?" Robert nodded. "That's exactly what they do." Ethan considered this, his young face serious. "I'd like that. Animals need people who can hear them." He paused, then added with the simple wisdom of a child, "It gets lonely when no one understands what you're saying." And in that moment, Sarah realized that perhaps Ethan had felt lonely too, the only one who could hear the silent cries of creatures around him, with no one to share his unique perception of the world. "We'll think about it," she promised, smoothing his hair back from his forehead. "For now, you need rest. You've had quite a day, my brave boy." What none of them noticed was the tall, slender man watching from across the waiting room, a stranger with keen eyes and an intense expression. He had arrived shortly after the Parkers returned from the pediatric clinic and had been observing their interaction with Robert with great interest. As the family prepared to leave, planning to return the next day to check on Max, the stranger approached, his movements deliberate and confident. "Excuse me," he said, his voice soft but commanding. My name is Adrian Gray. I believe we have something important to discuss about your son. Have you ever had a unique connection with an animal? A moment when you felt you could understand exactly what they were trying to tell you? Share your story below. Sarah stepped protectively in front of Ethan, instantly wary of the stranger. After the day's events, her maternal instincts were on high alert. "I'm sorry, but this isn't a good time. My son needs rest." Adrian Gray didn't move. He was tall and lean with salt and pepper hair and eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. He wore a simple gray suit that somehow made him look both professional and approachable. "I understand your caution, Mrs. Parker," he said, his voice calm and measured, "but I'm not here by accident. I've been tracking cases like your son's for over 20 years. Daniel moved to stand beside Sarah, forming a protective barrier between the stranger and Ethan. "How do you know our name? And what exactly do you mean by cases like our son's?" Adrian reached slowly into his jacket pocket and withdrew a business card, which he handed to Daniel. "I'm a researcher with the International Institute for Interspecies Communication. Your son's ability to hear animals in distress is exceedingly rare and extremely valuable." Robert stepped forward, studying the card. "This is the research center I mentioned," he confirmed, looking at Sarah and Daniel. "They're legitimate and well-respected in the field." Adrian nodded gratefully at Robert. "Mr. Thompson contacted our office after the rescue this morning. When I heard the details, I caught the first flight from Denver." He glanced down at Ethan, who was watching him with curious eyes. "I've only encountered 7 other people with abilities like your son's in my entire career." Ethan, who had been hiding behind his mother's legs, suddenly spoke up. "You have a dog who helps you find people like me." Adrian's eyebrows shot up in surprise. "Yes, I do. A border collie named Luna." He tilted his head, studying Ethan with newfound interest. "She's not with me today. She's back in Colorado." "She misses you," Ethan said simply. "She's watching the door, waiting." A look of wonder crossed Adrian's face. "That's remarkable. Luna does indeed watch the door when I'm away." He knelt down to Ethan's level. "Can you tell me how you know that?" Ethan shrugged, as if the answer were obvious. "She showed me. When you said your name, I saw her in my head. She has one blue eye and one brown eye." Adrian's smile widened. "That's exactly right." He looked up at Sarah and Daniel. "This is extraordinary. Most animal empaths need physical proximity to connect with an animal, to be able to sense one from this distance, based solely on its connection to me." Sarah placed her hands protectively on Ethan's shoulders. "It's been a very long day, Mr. Gray. Whatever this is, whatever Ethan can do, we're still trying to process it ourselves." "Of course," Adrian said, standing up. "I don't mean to intrude on a difficult day, but I believe I can help." He handed Sarah another card. "My institute offers training for people with Ethan's gifts. We can teach him how to control what he hears, how to filter out the background noise of animal consciousness. Without training, it can become overwhelming." Daniel's expression remained skeptical. "And what would you want in return? To study him? Run tests?" "Only with your full consent and involvement," Adrian assured them. "Our primary mission is to help people like Ethan understand and develop their abilities, not to treat them as research subjects." His expression grew more serious. "But I should warn you, once word gets out about what Ethan can do, others will come, people with less honorable intentions." Robert nodded grimly. "He's right. A child who can communicate with animals this way would be of immense interest to everyone from wildlife researchers to pharmaceutical companies testing on animals." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. She hadn't considered the wider implications of Ethan's abilities, or the attention they might attract. "We appreciate the information, Mr. Gray," Daniel said firmly, "but right now, we need to get our son home. It's been a traumatic day for all of us." Adrian nodded understandingly. "Of course. Please take my card. Call me when you're ready to talk further." He smiled gently at Ethan. "It was an honor to meet you, young man. What you did today was very brave." As they left the animal hospital, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that their lives had irrevocably changed. The weight of the day's events, the fire, Max's rescue, the revelations about Ethan's abilities, and now this mysterious researcher seemed almost too much to bear. In the car, Ethan fell asleep almost immediately, exhausted by the day's events. Sarah turned to look at him, this small boy who had always been special, but whose gifts were far more extraordinary than they had ever imagined. "What are we going to do, Daniel?" she whispered, careful not to wake their son. Daniel kept his eyes on the road, his knuckles white against the steering wheel. "I don't know, but we'll figure it out together. We always do." When they arrived home, their modest house seemed like a sanctuary, a place where they could shut out the world and its complications, at least for a little while. Daniel carried the sleeping Ethan to his bedroom, while Sarah made a quick dinner, the normalcy of the routine providing a small comfort. Later that evening, after tucking Ethan in, they sat at the kitchen table, the business cards from Dr. Chen, Robert Thompson, and Adrian Gray laid out before them like pieces of a puzzle they didn't know how to solve. "Should we call this Institute?" Sarah asked, turning Adrian's card over in her hands. "What if they want to take him away for testing or training?" Daniel shook his head. "No one is taking our son anywhere, but we can't ignore this either. You heard what Gray said. If we don't help Ethan learn to control this ability, it could become overwhelming for him." Sarah nodded reluctantly. "I've been thinking about all those nights he woke up crying about animals in trouble. All those times we thought he was just having nightmares or making up stories." Her voice broke. "We didn't listen to him, Daniel. All this time he's been hearing real animals in distress, and we told him it was just his imagination." Daniel reached across the table and took her hand. "We didn't know. How could we have known? This isn't exactly covered in parenting books." A soft knock at the back door interrupted their conversation. They exchanged confused glances. It was nearly 10 p.m., well past the hour for casual visitors in their small town. Daniel approached the door cautiously, then relaxed when he saw Robert Thompson's familiar face through the window. He opened the door. "Robert, everything okay with Max?" Robert nodded. "Max is stable. I just left the hospital." He glanced past Daniel to where Sarah sat at the kitchen table. "I'm sorry to disturb you so late, but there's something you need to know. May I come in?" Sarah gestured to the empty chair across from her. "Of course." Robert sat down, declining their offer of coffee. "The local news ran the story about Ethan and Max," he said without preamble. "It's already being picked up by national outlets. They're calling it the Animal Psychic Rescue Story." Sarah groaned, dropping her head into her hands. "How bad is it?" "See for yourself," Robert said, pulling out his phone and bringing up a news website. The headline read, "Miracle Child, 5-year-old animal whisperer risks life to save dog from burning building." The article beneath featured a photo of Ethan taken at the scene, his face smudged with soot, standing beside the stretcher carrying Max to the veterinary van. The caption read, "Ethan Parker, 5, somehow heard a dog trapped in a burning barn." Experts say his abilities could revolutionize our understanding of animal communication. "This is exactly what we didn't want," Daniel said, his voice tight with frustration. "They're turning him into some kind of sideshow attraction." "It gets worse," Robert admitted. "Adrian Gray wasn't the only one who saw the story. I was approached at the animal hospital by a representative from MindLink Pharmaceuticals. They're a company that conducts animal testing for medical research. They were asking questions about Ethan." Sarah's blood ran cold. "What kind of questions?" "About the extent of his abilities, whether he could communicate with lab animals, whether he'd be available for consulting work." Robert's disgust was evident in his tone. "I told them to get lost, but they left a card anyway." He placed another business card on the table, this one bearing a sleek corporate logo. Daniel picked it up, then immediately crumpled it in his fist. "This is insane. He's a child, not a tool for their experiments." "I agree," Robert said firmly, "but you need to understand what you're dealing with now. Ethan's abilities are unique and valuable to scientists, researchers, corporations, even government agencies. The world is about to beat a path to your door." Sarah stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "We need to protect him. He's just a little boy. He doesn't understand what any of this means." "That's why I came tonight," Robert said. "To warn you, yes, but also to make a suggestion." He hesitated, then continued. "I have a cabin in the mountains, about 3 hours from here. It's remote, private. You could stay there until you figure out your next steps, away from the media, away from companies like MindLink." Daniel and Sarah exchanged looks. The offer was tempting. A chance to escape the sudden spotlight, to process everything that had happened in peace. "What about your work, your job?" Robert asked Daniel. "I can take some family leave," Daniel said slowly. "After what happened today, no one would question it." Sarah nodded. "And I've been working remotely anyway." She looked at Robert gratefully. "Are you sure about this? We don't want to impose." "Absolutely sure," Robert said firmly. "Besides, it would mean a lot to Max. He's going to need several weeks of recovery, and being near Ethan seems to help him heal." The plan made sense, a temporary retreat to somewhere quiet where they could help Ethan understand his abilities and decide how to move forward. "We'll do it," Daniel decided. "We can leave tomorrow before this story gets any bigger." Robert looked relieved. "Good. I'll make the arrangements." He stood to leave, then paused. "One more thing. Adrian Gray, I did some checking on him after you left. His institute is legitimate, and their work with animal empaths is well regarded. When you're ready, I think he could genuinely help Ethan." After Robert left, Daniel and Sarah stayed up late, making plans and packing essentials. They decided not to tell Ethan about the media attention. He had enough to process without adding that complexity. The next morning, Ethan woke early, asking immediately if they could visit Max at the hospital. "We will," Sarah promised. "But first, we're going on a little adventure. Mr. Thompson has a cabin in the mountains where we can stay for a while. Max will come too, once he's strong enough to leave the hospital." Ethan's eyes lit up. "A cabin? With animals around?" Daniel nodded. "Lots of wildlife, deer, rabbits, birds, all kinds of creatures. Will they be scared of us?" "Maybe at first," Sarah said. "But something tells me you might be able to help with that." As they packed the car, Sarah noticed a news van slowly cruising down their street. "Time to go," she murmured to Daniel, who nodded grimly. They left town via back roads, avoiding the main streets where someone might recognize them. 3 hours later, they turned onto a narrow dirt track that wound through dense pine forest. At the end of the road stood Robert's cabin, a sturdy 2-story structure with a wide porch and windows that looked out over a stunning mountain vista. "It's beautiful," Sarah breathed as they got out of the car. The air was crisp and clean, scented with pine and wildflowers. Ethan stood very still, his head tilted slightly as if listening. "There are so many animals here," he whispered, a smile spreading across his face. "And they're not scared or hurt. They're just living." Daniel exchanged a glance with Sarah. It was the first time they'd seen Ethan truly relaxed since the fire. Perhaps here, surrounded by nature but away from human distractions, they could begin to understand the extent of their son's extraordinary gift. Inside, the cabin was rustic but comfortable, with a large stone fireplace, comfortable furniture, and well-stocked bookshelves. A note from Robert on the kitchen counter welcomed them and explained that a veterinary colleague would bring Max to join them in a few days, once he was stable enough for the journey. As Sarah unpacked their things, Daniel took Ethan outside to explore the immediate surroundings. Through the kitchen window, she watched as her son knelt beside a small stream, his hand extended towards something she couldn't see. A moment later, a wild rabbit cautiously approached, sniffing Ethan's fingers before allowing him to gently stroke its ears. The sight brought tears to her eyes. All this time, they had seen glimpses of Ethan's gift without truly understanding what they were witnessing. How many times had animals approached him without fear? How many times had he tried to tell them about the creatures he could hear, only to be dismissed? That evening, as they sat before a crackling fire, Ethan curled up between them on the sofa, Sarah finally asked the question that had been on her mind all day. "Ethan, honey, when did you first realize you could hear animals talking to you?" Ethan looked up from the picture book he'd been flipping through. "I don't remember not hearing them," he said simply. "Didn't you hear them too?" Sarah shook her head. "No, sweetheart. Most people can't hear what animals are thinking or feeling the way you can." Ethan's brow furrowed in confusion. "But they're so loud sometimes, especially when they're scared or hurt." "Is that why you ran into the barn to save Max?" Daniel asked gently. "Because you heard him calling for help?" Ethan nodded. He was so scared. The fire was getting closer, and his leg hurt really bad. He kept calling and calling, but no one was coming. His lower lip trembled at the memory. "I couldn't just leave him there." Sarah pulled him close. "You were very brave, but also very lucky. That fire could have hurt you badly." "Max wouldn't have let that happen. Ethan said with absolute certainty. He protected me when the roof started falling. Daniel leaned forward. Ethan, we want to understand your gift better, to help you use it safely. There are people who study abilities like yours, people who might be able to teach you how to control when and what you hear from animals. Like Mr. Gray? Ethan asked, surprising them both. The one with the dog named Luna? Sarah nodded. Yes, like him. Would you want to talk to people like that, to learn more about what you can do? Ethan considered the question seriously, his young face thoughtful. I think so. Sometimes it gets really loud in my head, especially at night. And sometimes I get sad when animals are hurting and I can't help them. That makes sense, Daniel said. Learning to control your gift might help with that. Ethan yawned widely, the excitement of the day catching up with him. As Sarah carried him to bed, he murmured sleepily, Will Max be here soon? He misses me. In a few days, she promised, tucking the blankets around him. Sweet dreams, my special boy. When she returned to the living room, Daniel was on the phone with Robert, getting an update on Max's condition. That's great news, he was saying. Yes, we're settled in fine. The place is perfect. After he hung up, he turned to Sarah. Max is recovering well, better than expected. The vet thinks he can be transported here in 3 days. He paused. I also asked about Adrian Gray. Robert says he's the real deal, respected in his field, with a genuine interest in helping people like Ethan. Do you think we should call him? Sarah asked, sinking onto the sofa beside Daniel. He nodded slowly. I think we need to understand what we're dealing with. If Gray can help Ethan learn to control his abilities, to not be overwhelmed by every animal in distress within miles, that seems worth exploring. Sarah leaned her head against Daniel's shoulder, watching the fire flicker in the grate. Our lives are never going to be the same, are they? No, Daniel admitted, but maybe that's not a bad thing. Ethan has an extraordinary gift. With the right guidance, think of the good he could do in the world. 3 days later, as promised, a specially equipped van wound its way up the mountain road to the cabin. Dr. Elena Martinez herself had made the journey, along with a veterinary technician, to ensure Max's safe transport. Ethan had been watching from the porch all morning, somehow knowing exactly when they would arrive. The moment the van came into view, he ran down the steps, practically vibrating with excitement. Max is here! Max is here! The van parked, and Dr. Martinez emerged, smiling at Ethan's enthusiasm. Someone's very excited to see you, she told the boy as the technician carefully opened the back doors. Max was awake and alert, his injured leg properly splinted, and his burns covered with protective bandages. The moment he saw Ethan, his tail began to thump against the padded surface of his stretcher. Hi, Max, Ethan said softly, approaching the van. I missed you too. With careful supervision from Dr. Martinez, the technician helped Max down from the van. The German Shepherd's movements were slow and cautious, but his eyes never left Ethan. He's healing remarkably well, Dr. Martinez told Sarah and Daniel as they watched the reunion. Faster than I would have expected, given the extent of his injuries. As if to prove her point, Max limped forward, meeting Ethan halfway. The boy dropped to his knees, and the dog pressed his muzzle against Ethan's chest in a gesture of pure trust and affection. He says his leg feels better every day, Ethan reported, looking up at Dr. Martinez, and he likes the special food you've been giving him. Dr. Martinez shook her head in wonder. I'll never get used to that, she admitted. It's like he's translating directly from Max's thoughts. After giving them instructions for Max's care and arranging a follow-up visit in a week, Dr. Martinez and the technician departed, leaving the Parkers now, with Max as an honorary family member, to settle into their temporary mountain retreat. That night, Ethan insisted that Max sleep in his room. Despite his injuries, the German Shepherd managed to climb onto the foot of Ethan's bed, where he curled up with a contented sigh. From the doorway, Sarah watched the pair boy and dog, connected by something deeper than ordinary human-animal bonds. There was something beautiful about it, she realized. Something pure and uncomplicated. Later, as she and Daniel sat on the porch swing, watching darkness fall over the mountains, she made her decision. I'm going to call Adrian Gray tomorrow, she said quietly. Ethan deserves to understand his gift, to learn from someone who knows what he's experiencing. Daniel nodded, taking her hand. I think that's the right call. And in the meantime, this is a good place for all of us to catch our breath, to figure out our next steps. In the peaceful mountain night, with a chorus of crickets and nightbirds providing a natural symphony, Sarah felt the first real sense of calm since the barn fire. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, as a family. A family that now included a very special German shepherd, and potentially a circle of people who could help Ethan understand and develop his extraordinary abilities. In Ethan's room, the boy slept soundly, one hand resting on Max's broad head. In his dreams, he ran through sunlit fields with Max at his side, both of them whole and uninjured, surrounded by creatures of all kinds who spoke to him not with words, but with feelings and images that he understood perfectly. For the first time in his young life, Ethan didn't feel different or strange. He felt understood. And in the quiet mountain cabin, far from the curious eyes of the world, he had found exactly what he needed, a safe place to be, exactly who he was. Would you trust a stranger like Adrian Gray if they claimed they could help your child with a special ability? Or would you be too cautious to accept their help? The morning sun streamed through the cabin windows, casting long golden rays across the wooden floor. Sarah sat at the kitchen table, Adrian Gray's business card in one hand, her phone in the other. She had been sitting there for nearly 20 minutes, rehearsing what she would say. Beside her, Daniel poured a second cup of coffee. "You don't have to do this now if you're not ready," he said softly. Sarah shook her head. "No, it needs to be done. For Ethan." She took a deep breath and dialed the number. Adrian Gray answered on the second ring, his voice calm and professional. "Mrs. Parker, I'm glad you called." "How did you know it was me?" Sarah asked, surprised. "I've been expecting your call," Adrian replied. "How is Ethan doing?" Sarah explained their situation. The retreat to the mountains, Max's arrival, and their concerns about Ethan's abilities becoming overwhelming. "We want to understand what he's experiencing," she concluded, "and how to help him manage it." "I understand completely," Adrian said. "Many children with Ethan's gifts struggle without proper guidance. Their abilities can be exhausting and emotionally draining, especially when they pick up distress signals from animals they can't help." That matched exactly what they had observed. Ethan's nightmares, his moments of inexplicable sadness, his insistence that animals needed help. "Can you really teach him to control it?" "Yes," Adrian said confidently. "With training, Ethan can learn to filter what he receives, to tune in when needed and tune out when the input becomes overwhelming. It's similar to how we filter background noise in crowded places." Sarah glanced through the window to where Ethan sat on the porch steps, Max resting beside him. A pair of chipmunks approached fearlessly, taking sunflower seeds from Ethan's outstretched palm, while a blue jay watched from a nearby branch. "He's so young. Is it normal for these abilities to manifest this early?" "It varies," Adrian explained. "Some animal empaths discover their abilities in adolescence or even adulthood, but the most powerful cases I've studied showed signs from early childhood, just like Ethan." Sarah hesitated before asking her next question. "Is he normal otherwise? I mean, will this affect his development, his ability to have a regular life?" Adrian's voice softened. "Mrs. Parker, Ethan is extraordinary, but that doesn't mean he can't have a normal, healthy life. With proper support, children like him grow up to be well-adjusted adults who use their gifts in remarkable ways. Some work in wildlife conservation, others in veterinary medicine or animal rescue. The key is helping them understand and manage their abilities early." It was exactly what Sarah needed to hear. So what happens now? "Ideally, I'd like to meet with Ethan in person, to observe his interactions with animals and assess the full range of his abilities. After that, we can develop a training program tailored to his specific needs." Sarah looked again at her son, so small, yet so powerfully connected to the natural world. "We're staying at a cabin in the mountains for the next few weeks. Would you be willing to come here? I don't think we're ready to return to town just yet." "Of course," Adrian agreed readily. "My schedule is flexible. I could fly in this weekend if that works for you." They arranged the details, and Sarah found herself feeling cautiously hopeful as she ended the call. Adrian had been respectful of their concerns, understanding of their protective instincts, and genuinely interested in helping Ethan rather than studying him. When she shared the news with Daniel, he seemed relieved. "I think we're doing the right thing," he said. "Did he seem legitimate to you?" Sarah nodded. "He did. He talked about Ethan as a child first, not as a research subject. and everything he said about what Ethan experiences matches what we've observed. That evening, they explained to Ethan that a man who understood his special ability would be coming to visit. He knows other children who can hear animals like you do, Sarah explained. He wants to help you understand your gift better. Ethan's eyes widened. There are other kids like me? A few, Daniel confirmed. Not many, but yes, you're not alone. Ethan seemed to digest this information, his young face thoughtful. Will he bring Luna with him this time? Sarah blinked in surprise, having forgotten about Adrian's border collie. I don't know, honey. We didn't ask. I hope so, Ethan said. She really wants to meet me. She thinks I'm interesting. The casual way he spoke about the thoughts of a dog he'd never met still took Sarah aback. But she was learning to accept these moments as part of who Ethan was. The next few days passed peacefully. Max's recovery continued to progress faster than expected, his burns healing cleanly and his broken leg showing remarkable improvement. Dr. Martinez, who visited for a follow-up examination, was amazed by his progress. I've never seen such rapid healing, she admitted as she checked Max's splint. It's almost as if, well, this will sound strange, but it's almost as if he has the will to heal faster than normal. Ethan, who had been watching closely, nodded. He does. He knows I want to go exploring, but we have to wait until his leg is better. Dr. Martinez glanced at Sarah, then back at Ethan. And you can tell that's what he's thinking? Uh-huh. He doesn't like being stuck inside. He wants to run in the forest and show me all the good places to find rabbits and deer. Max's tail thumped against the floor at these words, as if confirming Ethan's translation. Dr. Martinez packed up her medical bag, shaking her head in wonder. Well, whatever the reason, he's healing beautifully. Another week or two, and we might be able to remove the splint and start physical therapy. After she left, Sarah found herself watching Ethan more closely, noticing the subtle ways he interacted with the wildlife around the cabin. He never seemed surprised when animals appeared, as if he had been expecting them. He would turn his head toward the forest moments before a deer stepped into view, or look up at the sky just as a hawk soared overhead. It was like witnessing a sixth sense in action, a constant awareness of the living creatures around him that went far beyond normal perception. And yet, for Ethan, it was simply his reality, as natural as breathing. Saturday morning dawned clear and bright. Adrian Gray was scheduled to arrive at noon, and Sarah found herself cleaning the already tidy cabin, her nervous energy seeking an outlet. Daniel watched her with amusement. It's not a job interview, you know. I know, she sighed, finally setting down the dust cloth. I just want everything to be perfect. This feels important, like a turning point for Ethan. At precisely noon, the sound of tires on gravel announced Adrian's arrival. Through the window, Sarah saw him emerge from a rented SUV, and to her surprise, a black and white border collie jumped out after him, one blue eye and one brown, just as Ethan had described. Ethan, who had been waiting impatiently all morning, ran to the door before Sarah could stop him. "Luna's here!" he called excitedly, flinging the door open and rushing outside. Sarah and Daniel followed quickly, concerned about Ethan's enthusiasm overwhelming their visitor, but what they witnessed stopped them in their tracks. Ethan had dropped to his knees in front of the border collie, who stood perfectly still, her mismatched eyes fixed intently on the boy. There was no barking, no jumping, just a profound stillness as dog and child seemed to study each other. Adrian made no move to interrupt, watching the interaction with keen interest. After a long moment, Ethan giggled and Luna's tail began to wag furiously. The spell broken, she circled Ethan joyfully, licking his face as he laughed. "She likes you," Adrian said, smiling. "That's a good sign. Luna is an excellent judge of character." Sarah and Daniel stepped forward to greet their visitor properly. Adrian's handshake was firm and confident, his manner friendly but professional. As they invited him inside, Max appeared in the doorway, his protective instincts evident in his alert posture. "This must be the famous Max," Adrian said, kneeling to allow the German Shepherd to approach on his own terms. "Hello, brave one." To Sarah's surprise, Max limped forward without hesitation, sniffing Adrian's extended hand before allowing him to gently touch his head. Luna approached more cautiously, respectful of the injured dog's space.